miles away across the Delaware River. So remember, I said the Delaware River would separate the American Army from the British area. Well, that Delaware River, once you got across the Delaware River, it was about 10 miles to Trenton, okay, which was really not too far from Pennsylvania. Now, the 400 Hessians that were there, the mercenaries, the soldiers that were being paid, they were kind of dug in for the winter. In other words, they weren't expecting any action in the winter. So they're kind of dug in, okay? Now, in Europe, the military tradition is you don't what? Fight in the winter. You wait till spring, okay? And during this war, that was supposedly in effect. They were fighting European rules. That when the winter comes, that's when you don't fight. And that answers part of your question of why they stopped too, because winter was coming. Oh, the rules are we don't fight in the winter, and they figured if they advanced much farther out, they could have just marched in there, it wouldn't have been winter, but they didn't know what they were going to be up against, and then it was going to be winter, and you're not supposed to fight. So the European military tradition of ceasing all fighting until spring is in effect during this war. Now, Washington's in a bad shape. He needs a break, right? I mean, he's got to get a victory here, but it's like our football team going up against the New England Patriots at this point. We've got to have some sort of a tremendous break to have a chance. Okay, well here's the break. Honeyman tells Washington that if you're going to win, if you're going to get this victory, what do you got to do? Break the rules. You got to break the cardinal rule of warfare and be willing to fight in the winter. And Washington, knowing the shape he was in, decided that might be a good idea. Now, here's what Honeyman, here was the quote that Honeyman gave Washington. You don't have to write it down, but listen. He said, "The Hessians are off their guards, half of them asleep or drunk, dreaming for Christmas." He's telling him, this is the perfect time to go in, but you have to break the cardinal rule of fighting in the winter. If you're willing to do that, this is the time. So Washington plans a surprise attack. He plans a surprise attack. Now he's going to have to take his army across what? The Delaware River. At this time it's pretty ice-choked. Okay? Full of ice. So he's going to have to take him across the Delaware and then march from the other side of the Delaware to where? Trenton. About how far?
10 miles.
10 miles. Very good. Well, they're planning this attack for Christmas Day. Talk about breaking the rules perfectly. You're not only going to fight in the winter, but you're going to fight on a holiday. We're going to talk about the Tet Offensive next year in Vietnam, where the North Vietnamese broke the rule of attacking on a holiday and caused trouble.
I'm sure about the story during World War II, where it was German and British troops on Christmas Day when they were fighting. They just didn't fight in no man's land.
Anyway, in what now?
They went into no man's land and were playing soccer.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. No, it's a weird deal when you come to war. But anyway, so they're planning this Christmas attack. Well, guess what Honeyman does on Christmas Eve? Anybody want to guess what Honeyman does on what?
He leaves.
And where's he go?
To the British.
He goes to Trenton. And he reports in to Colonel Rawl. Okay, there he goes. So on Christmas Eve, Honeyman works his way back to Trenton and gives a report on the Americans to Rawl. Because what does Honeyman think he is? A British spy. And the British believe that he's a loyalist spy, he's on their side, and he has no trouble walking right in and meeting with Colonel Rawl. No problem at all. So Honeyman leaves on Christmas Eve, makes his way across the Delaware, gets to Trenton, and he asks to meet with Rawl, Colonel Rawl, of the Hessian commander, and he has no problem getting in and visiting with him. None at all. And there's three things that Honeyman tells Rawl that he has seen in the American camp about the colonial army. There's three things that Honeyman tells Rawl about the American army. He's seen them. He says, I've been to their camp and I've seen it. And you need to know that these are three things that are going on with the colonial army. First of all, number one, he tells them they're in complete disarray. He says the American colonial army is in complete disarray. Is that true? No. They're a little bit screwed up, but they're not in complete disarray. Disarray, D-I-S-A-R-R-A-Y. Disarray, complete disarray. Okay, that means they're disorganized, not ready to do anything. He said they're lacking materials, and what do you mean by materials?
Soldiers.
Not so much soldiers maybe, but guns and ammo. Guns, weapons, they're lacking materials, they're lacking weapons. And the third thing he tells them is that those American colonists, that army, is on the verge of mutiny. They're just about ready to mutiny over Washington. He tells them these things. He's, man, they're in disarray, they're lacking materials, and they're just at the edge of mutiny right now. I'm going to get back to something somebody said over here in a minute. Well, Colonel Rawl is delighted at the news, and he decides he can go ahead and lower his guard for the winter months. Because he's there to keep an eye on them, right? That's his job. He's there to keep an eye on them. That's what he was sent there by General Cornwallis to do, is keep an eye on them. Well, he gets this report from Honeyman, feels very confident in the report, says, you know, I can drop my guard here, especially on Christmas Day. So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Christmas Day, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Christmas Day, the Americans begin to cross the Delaware River in 3 separate locations. In other words, Washington splits up his army into 3s, and they start to cross the Delaware River. And here are the 3 prongs of this attack. Washington takes a large group of soldiers and crosses a river right where camp was. So if we're camped right here, he just went right to the river and crossed. So Washington took a large group of colonial soldiers and crossed the Delaware right at camp, right directly across from camp. Large group of soldiers. He takes, 2,000 soldiers, okay, approximately, and crosses the river right there. He sends 1,500 more militia downriver, and they cross downriver. Now, I know what you're thinking. What are you thinking? Because they're militia. Remember I told you? Yeah, remember I said soldiers are different than militia? He was good. He was able to drum up 1,500 militia. Militia aren't part of the number he had, right? They're militia. So he takes 1,500 militia and has them go down the Delaware River, if this is the way it's flowing, goes down the Delaware River, and then they cross there. So he's crossing here, he sends them downriver, 1,500 cross there. He takes 700 more soldiers and has them cross directly across from where Trenton was. They had an idea that Trenton was this down here and that way, so he took 700 more and they crossed directly across from where Trenton would be. So you got 700 directly towards Trenton, you got approximately 2,000 with Washington going straight across from camp, and you got another 1,500 militia downriver that are crossing. So they're going to have approximately 3,200, right? My math is correct, 27 and 15 is what? 42? My math is correct. So we got 22 and 2,000, about 4,200 men in this deal, okay? That's at 4 o'clock on Christmas Day. Now, the key to this whole thing is the Americans have got to get to the other side of the river by midnight. Because if they don't get there by midnight, they aren't going to have enough time to march that 10 miles to Trenton before daylight. Okay, good. So they leave at 4 o'clock, they try to get across the river. It's not as easy as it is these days. And they've got to get to the other side by midnight in order to get themselves enough time to march to Trenton. Okay? Or the element of surprise is over, is it not? If it's light, they're not going to surprise anybody. Okay? Now by the time General Washington and his group, just his group, get across the river with the ice-choked river, it's 4 a.m. in the morning. So he's 4 hours late. Now by the time they got organized, by the time he made the decision, 12 hours. Okay? So, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. He's 4 hours behind schedule. That's not even his big problem. The other 2 prongs never made it across the river. So now it's just him and 2,000 soldiers. Just turned back, couldn't get across. This is an ice-choked river. It wasn't easy to get across. So on top of everything else, the fact that he's 4 hours behind schedule, he finds out that the two other prongs of the attack didn't make it across. So he's got to make a decision, doesn't he? What are his two choices? Call the attack off and go back across the Delaware to avoid a possible defeat, because another defeat here is going to do what? They're done. I mean, they're done, the revolution's over. Or what can he do? Press on and try to fight with what he has and win. So that's the choice he has. Either go back across the Delaware, regroup and avoid a possible defeat, or he can continue on and fight with the 2,000 soldiers he has and try to win. Well, this goes back, I think, what maybe Mason said yesterday, a different thing. He was lucky and nobody, when they crossed the East River, caught on to that. Nobody was spying. Like I said, well, in this case it was different. There was a loyalist spy that watched Washington and the Americans cross the Delaware. He saw him do it. And when he did it, he raced back to Trenton to give who that information? Rahl. Okay? So a loyalist spy sees Washington cross the Delaware, and he skedaddles back to where the Hessians were camped in Trenton. And he wants to give this message to Colonel Rahl. Well, he doesn't have the pull that John Honeyman had, so he's a loyalist spy, and you got to be a little bit nervous, in a way. So who stops him as soon as he gets into camp? No? Good, yeah, kind of. That'd be a good story. But who stops him when he rides into camp? The guards, the soldiers. They stop him, and they don't want to take him in to see their commander because they're not sure exactly. So what do they have him do instead of go in and report? What? Write it down. So the spy is confronted by these Hessian soldiers. They force him to write down a message explaining the situation, and the soldiers will do what? Hand it to Rahl. Okay? So the guy writes out the message, folds it up, gives it to the sentry guard, and the guard then takes it into Rahl and hands it to him. What'd you say?
It's going to be like, you're in for
What?
It's going to be like something like, never mind.
Well, Rahl takes the message and he's having a good time, having a few toddies, having a conversation with fellow officers, and he takes that note and he sticks it in his pocket. Does not read it. Sticks it in his pocket without reading it. Now, I'm not making this up. So the sentry brings in this note that was written by the spy that witnessed Washington and his soldiers coming across the Delaware. He writes down the contents of what he saw, gives it to the sentry. Sentry gives it to Rahl. Rahl's having a good time drinking a few toddies with his fellow officers and sticks that note right in his pocket, doesn't even read it.
Solid.
Well, the following morning, which would be, no, actually it'd be the 25th because they left the Christmas Eve. Okay, just a second. They attacked at 4 o'clock. Yeah, 26th. On the 26th, they attack Trenton, and the Hessians are caught completely off guard. Totally off guard. Now, talk about a dumb move. Guess who's among the first to be killed in the American attack? Colonel Rahl. One of the first men killed in this attack was Colonel Rahl. Probably with the note still in his pocket, for all we know. So Colonel Rahl is among the first to die in this American attack. And all the Hessian soldiers that survive are captured. So they are either killed or captured. So Washington troops attack. And even though they're behind, they're successful because nobody has a clue they're coming, really. They're not ready. They're, like Honeyman said, drunk, relaxing, waiting for Christmas. They're probably recovering, aren't they, from Christmas? Okay? Now, British reinforcements, General Cornwallis gets word of this, and he rushes to the Trenton area, and he arrives on January 2nd, 1777. So time doesn't, takes time for news. Anyway, and travel. So British reinforcements under General Cornwallis rush to the Trenton area when they get word of this, and they arrive on January 2nd, 1777. And they get there late in the evening, and they plan on doing what? Attacking Washington early the next day. Well, guess what Washington does, just like he did on the East River. He leaves campfires burning, He leaves a few people up there to tend him. He slips away and escapes. The ones that are tending the campfires then slip away and let them burn out totally. And Cornwallis has no one to fight the morning of January 3rd. They're gone. But this stunning victory for the Continental Army was a huge morale boost. And it kept the revolution alive, because what happened after that? These commissioners, these commissions ended, they re-signed up. Not only did they sign up, other people joined in, including militia. So who do you thank for this, maybe? Who has kept the war going now? John Honeyman. Little known John Honeyman is the guy that keeps our cause still going. So thanks to John Honeyman, the American colonists will fight on in their attempt to win from Great Britain. Now, after this victory at Trenton, what do you think Washington did? He marched to Princeton and defeated the British there as well. So after the victory at Trenton, General Washington and the Continental Army struck again. They defeated the British at Princeton. After defeating the British at Princeton, he withdrew his troops to Morristown, which was in northern New Jersey, and he set up camp there. So after his victory at Trenton, then Princeton, Washington withdrew his troops to Morristown, which was in northern New Jersey, where they set up camp. Now from there, Washington raided British lines of communication and supplies that went into Trenton and New Brunswick. So what he did is when he got into Morristown, he then sent out soldiers and they were raiding British lines of communication supplies, cutting up their lines where they were bringing in supplies and they were communicating, cut them up in both Trenton and New Brunswick. So no one could get any information out of those areas or bring any more ammunition or supplies in. They cut up those particular lines of communication supplies. Well, because of that, and because of the victories in New Jersey, what did British General Howe do? He pulled his troops out of New Jersey back to New York. Okay? So as a result of these victories in New Jersey, by a gutsy Washington, British General Howe, Sir William Howe, pulled his troops out of New Jersey and took them back to New York. Okay? So what did we really gain out of this? These victories. Big morale boost, because Americans thought they could, hey, we can now win battles against the British, and Washington's Continental Army does what? It grows and grows and grows. Okay? Soldiers come flocking to his side. Okay. Tomorrow or Monday, we're going to talk about the Battle of Bound Brook, and then we'll probably lecture Monday and Tuesday. Well, some talks the Battle of Bound Brook. Oh, New Brunswick is not on there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it is.
but you didn't say anything about it.
No,
That's where they set up.
That's where they cut the lines out of Trenton and New Brunswick. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, where in New Brunswick?
Okay, here's what I'm trying to figure out. Carly's got a great point. We're probably going to finish we're going to go Monday and Tuesday. I think this is what will happen. Monday, I'm going to change things up. Monday, we're going to lecture. Tuesday, we're going to lecture. Wednesday, what do we do? I'm having cake. Okay. When we get back, we'll kind of do a daily big review and probably have a test probably Tuesday or Wednesday when we get back as a gift.
We should have
How many people are here going to be gone Wednesday?
I don't know.
Oh, I can speak for myself. All right, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll have the cake and do a lecture on Tuesday. Yeah, cake and lecture. And Wednesday we'll take a break. Okay, perfect.
Wait,
Yeah, just short.
is.
Alright, Buck's got, we don't want Buck to miss out. Tuesday cake and some lecture, I've lectured with Kate before. And then Wednesday, we'll take it easy, watch out or something. Yeah.
Is Wednesday,
It'll be an abbreviated.
the first 4 periods only, or 20-minute periods also?
20 minutes.